That's not what you said.
I have a question. Sean, why do you actually like? You're better off being Levy's defense lawyer at this point, because you do. I've seen this a lot recently. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen this a lot recently. Levy's defense lawyer. You're on these shows breaking down why everyone shouldn't be Levy out. Why shouldn't, like, I don't get it. Is Levy paying you? Is he got a slide behind the door's pocket? Like, I don't know what's going on. It's
ironic. Levy's paying Lubo.
You might be the Tottenham mouthpiece. That's what you might.
I would love to get paid. I think Daniel Levy probably wouldn't pay me enough for my value because that's what he does, right? Yeah. He underpays on the salary. But
this is
Daniel Levy for me is far better than 99% of chairmen in world football. He's up against a very strong and ridiculously corrupt competitive field. On the balance of probability, those corruption techniques are not going to change. And so to answer Lubo's comment or question at the same time as I'll answer you, Jords, I land now on the reality that unless he and his cohort behind him are willing to adapt to a new paradigm in football whereby corruption and the rules don't mean anything, then he should probably depart and hand over the baton to someone who will. But if you're asking me whether or not he's done a good job, it's not the same as Levy out. Levy out is like, fuck you, I hate you, you're shit, you're a cancer, you're a parasite, all that stuff. I don't share that. I think that's outrageous, and I think that is so ridiculously naive and ignorant. But me personally, I think that he's done a really, really good job amongst a very difficult set of backdrops that are the realities of football. I think he's done a really good job. And I don't think that we should be sitting there saying, because your next door neighbor won the lottery, your wife is putting pressure on you to buy a Ferrari that you can't afford because the guy next door got lucky. Right, that's what's happening in most of football, right? Like these teams in football.
No. I like this.
To win the lottery, Sean, it's a 1 in 14 million chance. It's not a 1 in 14 million chance to win the Premier League. Sorry.
I was actually with you all the way up until you went to that analogy, and it was like,
I've got 1,000 other analogies I can use. I've got 1,000 other analogies.
It wasn't a lottery ticket though, because when you actually look at it, it's like everyone's got the same fair chance. In fact, we make just as much money as Arsenal, so we can be just as ambitious as Arsenal. So there's no excuse as to why we can't spend like them. So when
there is, it's not an excuse, but there's not. You're right. There's no excuse, but there are explanations, and the explanations but no excuse. Yeah, and the explanations are not just down to Tottenham Hotspur and Daniel Levy's appetite for risk. The explanations are that if there's a player that comes available, if you're the team that's sixth of the top six or the next biggest of the big five, and the other big five have won 93% of all trophies that could have been won, that have been won in the last 25 years, have all been won by those five, and you're the team that's trying to break into that, then the expectations of the fan base demand these certain outcomes. When they don't happen, they start to call our club unambitious. But in reality, if there is a player like Florian Wirtz, or there's a player like Erling Haaland, or anyone else, I'm not just picking those two by chance, I'm picking them. I could pick 100 players, and that Tottenham Hotspur want to get in there. In order to get in that mix and be a part of that trophy participation, you have to sign the best players. In order to get the best players, you need to have something more than just money. If it was all about money, everybody would be playing in Saudi Arabia. The fact they aren't is that other things are bigger, are more important to some players than just money, such as the probability of winning trophies. And when 92% of all trophies in the last 25 years have gone in 5 directions, and in the last 12 years, 75% have gone in 2 directions, the two teams who were nowhere before Daniel Levy took over, and they came in, they had a different relationship with money, they came in before the rules were set up, and they've taken and stolen a competitive advantage that even to this day, they can compete better than Arsenal and Liverpool can on the monetary side.
When we refer to competing,
Tottenham can't pick up the phone and compete with Liverpool. If Tottenham want to
play, you're talking about competing for them once we like just going in for the player. Cool, we can't compete with certain teams going in for the player. But the main reason why when we make those calls to these players and their agents that we don't compete is because the wages we offer. That's the biggest.
No, that's not true.
When you said look at our neighbours. You said look at our neighbours. I love Arsenal and so on for their wage budget, but you can't fault them for showing ambition and giving what players want.
Hang on. Can I ask
simply because they pay players what they want. We pay about 3 players above 150k.
Hang on. What's the alternative here? What's the alternative? You do what Manchester United have done.
Not Man United.
Hold up. Manchester United have paid. First of all, Man United have got the biggest brand in world football. They earn the second most amount of revenue in world football and have done forever. They're first or second. They always will be until the goalposts entirely shift. But they get themselves in a predicament. We tried to pay big money. We paid big money for one player. We paid him more than we've ever paid for anyone else before. Turned out to be a shit show. Couldn't get him off our own books and had to pay him off to terminate his contract. That exact same thing is happening at Manchester United, but not just in one player, but far more expensive in the case of 5 players. Garnacho, Casemiro, Sancho, and Rashford, and Anthony. Those guys. Well, we're not Garnacho, but even though he's a prick, but there's at least 4, right? Those guys have been paid far too much money. So it's not about not paying the right salary. And by the way, if you're looking at how much money Tottenham earn and the overall percentage of what we earn versus what we pay when you include interest and debt and all those things, the money to pay for salaries comes from the same pot as the money to pay for transfers. If you want to pay more on salaries, you have to pay less on transfers. So Tottenham might be in this situation where you think because we pay £120 million a year, we can suddenly pay 300 grand a week. If you want to pay 250, 300 grand a week for one player, it means you don't get to pay to buy 2 or 3 or 4 more players that summer. It means you get one player, one transfer fee, one massive outlay. That's the way it works at our revenue level, unless you have the ability and the ambition of owners that have mechanics and engineering around selling your hotels, selling your car parks, of which Tottenham Hotspur don't have the owners that do that. So I hear you on the fact that we could do it differently, but in terms of our legitimate revenue, Chelsea couldn't do what they were doing. Arsenal couldn't do what they were doing. Man City couldn't do what they were doing if it wasn't for, and Aston Villa certainly couldn't if it wasn't for mechanics and engineering of selling your left arm to your right arm. If you want Tottenham to do that, fair enough. I think that is not something that you should be resentful of Tottenham owners for. I think you should be resentful of the Premier League for allowing that bollocks to happen.
This is way above my area of expertise, bro.
No, but that's way above my pay. No, I get what you're saying. I do totally get what you're saying, Sean. And I understand it. Like, I'm not on the stage of like, get Levy out of the club. Da, da, da. I think he's actually done a good job. Like I said, when I started supporting Tottenham, we were competing with the actual mid-table clubs. We were competing with the mid-table clubs. So where we've gone from and where we are now, it's a big step. But at the same time, I just feel like since we've been here, we've not done enough to try and maintain where we're at, and we're just in the level of just about do enough to get to the top 4, just about get to that top 5, and then once we get there, it's like, let's not push on.
But if you want to do more, you either have to get owners in that are willing to break the rules and get away with it, because that's essentially what happens. And if that's your take, fair enough. And to be entirely honest, I'm at the point where I'm actually thinking that way. I'm like, you know what, Daniel Levy, I appreciate what you've done. I admire, and I think I respect the fact you've tried to make us competitive organically. But at the end of the day, the chance was there 3 weeks ago for the Premier League teams to close the loopholes. They decided not to. So if everyone's just getting on board, this is corrupt as fuck. Let's just continue. And for what it's worth, not to get off the topic, Perch, I'll let you land now. It's what's happening with Saudi Arabia and Turkey.
Yeah,
it's so obvious that there's something bigger going on with money laundering, and United's like US money men coming in, bringing money in. John Duran going to Villa for 70 million quid for a season, and then he's now going to Turkey.
6 months. It was half a season.
Why is it that Besiktas, Fenerbahce, and Galatasaray are quietly going about creating some of the best teams in European football when they have no fucking money? It's all coming from Turkey. It's all there is so much money that's going on. Just look at the Club World Cup. That whole thing was broken. There was no money. There was no appetite. There was no investment. All of a sudden, DAZN come in with a £1 billion bid for the Club World Cup. Where does DAZN get the money? Well, funnily enough, a week before they bid it, they got a £1 billion investment from where? Oh, I'll give you a clue. Saudi. Right, the amount of corruption that is happening right now that is not being spoken about in football through Saudi Arabia and Turkey, it's like a money laundering scheme where essentially football players are being trafficked. It's like a new version of money laundering where football players are the new commodity that just get moved around for a little while. They get paid a few hundred grand a week more than they're worth, and they'll end up back in the Premier League or Europe in a couple of years. But in order for the money to change hands in ways that can't be can't be figured out by the bullshit rules of FIFA and UEFA is outrageous. And sorry, I'm finished. Perchy, go for it, mate. Sorry, mate.